Y'all, Ryan from Oakland Ghosts, and today we're talking about mixers. Now, if you're just getting your feet wet or thinking about getting your feet wet in the kind of outboard gear, hardware gear, DAWless kind of setup, one of the first things you're going to want to invest in is a mixer. Obviously, you need to sum all your different input sources out to either your monitors or your headphones so that you can hear all the different gear that you have together. So a mixer should be really early on your list of equipment to buy when you're thinking about going the hardware DAWless kind of route. So today I'm not like recommending or pointing out a specific mixer that I think you should buy because there's a million use cases and everybody's use case is different. This video is more about what pitfalls to avoid and things you should consider when looking at a mixer so you don't make the same mistake I did, which is buying your third mixer in 3 years. With that said, let's jump into it. Let's talk mixers and let's start with the number one thing that you need to consider when you're getting a mixer for your DAWless setup. And that is inputs. Get more inputs than you think you're going to need. I cannot stress this enough. This is absolutely the most important factor to consider. Even if you're just working with a Digitakt and a Volca and you're like, I only need 3 tracks or 2 tracks. I promise you, you're eventually gonna need more. You're always gonna need more. And I think probably a good rule of thumb is think about the maximum amount of inputs or tracks that you're gonna need and just double it straight up. Get way more than you're gonna need because you're never gonna complain about having too many tracks, but once you bump up against that wall of not having enough, your options get really limited. You're either gonna have to reduce the amount of gear you use for your song, or you're gonna have to buy a new mixer. I mean, those are your two options. It's really simple. So I'll give you an example. Let's look at the first mixer that I bought. Ooh, the Mackie Mix 8. Now, to be fair, I thought this was going to be perfect. At the time, as I was saying, your Digitakt Volca combo, right? I was using the Deluge and the Moog Sound Studio. And that's it. All I wanted was to be able to have the Deluge and my separate sound studio pieces to have an easy way to mix it and send that out. That's it. As an added bonus, this unit, which is really cool, I gotta say, and it's only like $100. It's pretty cheap. It also has an aux send and a return. A lot of mixers don't have a return. They'll have aux sends, but they won't have returns. But what that means is I could send effects like my Zoya pedal and bring it back without using one of the limited amount of tracks I have here. And then I could use this knob as a kind of attenuator to send those different tracks to the effect. Very, very cool. And this actually worked perfect for what I wanted it to do. It was working perfect. Actually, here's another thing to consider. This is something that could be very, very confusing, is the way that mixer companies name their products. This is called the Mackie Mix 8. It even says on it, 8-channel compact mixer. But you'll notice when you look at it, there is 2 mono tracks and 2 stereo tracks. That's 6 tracks. That's not 8 tracks. Why is that? Because your other 2 tracks is the stereo out. And this is down the line, the Tascam line, a lot of the Mackie lines. 2 of those tracks are always going to be the stereo out. And that can be confusing if you think, oh, I'm getting a Mix 8, so I'm getting 8 inputs. You're not getting 8 inputs. You're getting 6 inputs and a stereo out. Keep that in mind. All that said, this is a great mixer. It's all analog. I didn't think I was going to like the knobs for turning for volume as opposed to faders, but they work great. It's all analog. It has 2 tracks with a preamp on it. It has 2 preamps they sound really good. They're analog. You can actually drive them really hard. And then the 2 stereo tracks are just line in, unbalanced or balanced. So great for synths, things like that. And then it has an EQ, very simple, high, mid, low, pretty basic stuff here. And then you got your pans, and then you have your aux channel. That's it. Very simple. And it was perfect for what I needed. Like I said, what I wanted to be able to run my Deluge and my Moog Sound Studio and just jam with them together. And that worked great. Until, and I swear to God, not even a week in, I realized this. Here's the thing. I make songs. The way my workflow works, I have almost 30 years of experience working in a DAW. And while I build and perform and track all my songs DAWlessly, I still like to do the final mix and master inside of my DAW. And what that means is what I really want is I want separation. I want each instrument on its own track. This is not an audio interface. This is just a mixer. That's all it is. So it has a stereo out, so you can send that to your monitors or your headphones, and that's it. That's the whole show, man. And I realized really quickly, I don't want a stereo mix of my Deluge. I'm not mastering in the DAW. Well, I am at the end. I want to be able to mix in my DAW too, my final mix. So it became pretty evident pretty quick that this wasn't going to work for me. And that led me down the next rabbit hole. And that is the mixer interface hybrids. If you want to do a workflow like mine, where you're sending your individual instruments on their own track into your DAW, but you also want to have the mixer functionality, you have two options basically. You can get an audio interface separate by itself and a mixer that has line outs for each track that you could feed to that audio interface. That's one option. And sometimes it's a cheaper option. That actually opens a door for a lot of things because there's plenty of audio interfaces out there and the mixers always have preamps. There's just a lot more variety. The second option, the option that I chose to go for, is getting a hybrid where it's a mixer and an audio interface combo. And what that means is it's just built in. So you have your mixer, but you also typically have a USB out that you can send to your DAW that'll track those things individually as well. And that led me to the Tascam Model 12. Now, again, the Model 12 has 10 inputs and one stereo out. Again, confusing. The Model series has the Model 12, the Model 16, and the Model 24, and they're pretty much identical, although I did make a mistake in choosing the 12, which we'll get to in a minute. Overall, I love the Tascam Model 12. I think it's very well built, and it's super, super powerful and flexible. What's great about it is it's not only a live mixer, which is primarily what I use it for, but you can actually record and do multi-track mixes directly to an SD card that you can then stem out or just grab the stereo file if you want, if you do your full mix there. It's super flexible like that. So if you weren't doing something like me where you have to have your synths connected and stuff, but say you're gonna do a rough recording of a band, you can just plug everything right in and you could do it on it. You don't have to be connected to a computer. It's great. But on top of that, it's also, as a third option, it's an audio interface. So I get 10 inputs that I can send to my DAW. And that is perfect for me. That's exactly what I wanted. That's exactly what I needed. At the time, I was only using mono synths, and I kind of felt like what I needed, again, like I said, double what you think you're going to actually need. I didn't feel like the 12 was quite enough. It was more than I needed. It was about 4 or 5 tracks more than I actually needed at the time. But I still felt like I should probably go more and go with the 16. And here's where I made a mistake. And that was me not understanding some of the nomenclature around their marketing and stuff like this. So the Model series I know now is basically identical. They all have, you can all record on board, multi-tracking. They all have an audio interface and they're all live mixers. They all work as all three of those things. But when I was looking at the literature, what caught my eye is that the Model 12 was the only one that offered DAW Control, okay? And I confused that with audio interface. So the 16 and the 24 are also audio interfaces with just more tracks. But at the time, when I saw DAW Control, what that meant to me was, okay, this is the only one that actually offers 10 tracks to send to my DAW. And I was actually incorrect in that. What the DAW Control actually means, and this is a pretty cool feature that you might work for your workflow, is you can switch the Model 12 to control your DAW. So the faders will control the faders like a MIDI faders basically will control the faders in your DAW. If you like to do a mix down, but you like to have the control of the faders, this can do that, which is pretty cool. But that's not something that I actually used. I just got it confused. I would have been better off going with the Model 16, which offered me more tracks. But again, I confused it, I messed up, and at the time, and actually for the last 2 years, the Model 12 has been perfect for me. It's been great. I was mostly using mono synths, and I didn't have any problem running out of tracks. Even as I gained a couple more synths, I still had plenty of room. I was still doing good until I got polysynths. And here's the thing about polysynths. Polysynths are typically stereo, and that means, for example, if I was running the TO5 and the Bree 6, if I was running that at the same time, that's 4 tracks right off the bat. So of my 10, I've almost eaten half of them on 2 synths. So once you start getting into bigger synths that are running stereo, you're going to eat tracks even faster. So again, this is why I'm saying stick to the rule. Think about the maximum you're going to need and double it. Just have more tracks than you're going to need. I got around this pretty easily for a while by my secret weapon, which was adding a patch bay. And what a patch bay allowed me to do is have all my synths plugged in, and with just with a single cable, I could reroute things. So, if I wasn't using the Onyx, I could plug in the TO, things like that. I could just rewire things really quick and everything would work fine. And that has worked for me for quite a while now. But I got to a point, especially once I got these 2 polysynths, that 10 inputs is just not enough and I need more. And so once again, I'm faced with that dilemma of, Do I get just a standard mixer that has plenty of outputs for each channel and then a separate audio interface device, or do I look for a hybrid? Well, I looked for a hybrid again because I just like that solution. It's just really easy. And the fact of the matter is I don't really use the DAW that much. It's literally the last step of my process. I mostly use these mixers as a live mixer. So I'm using it while I'm performing, while I'm developing my song, while I'm doing everything with all these synths. That's what I'm using the mixer for. And then at the very end, when I'm ready to perform it, that's the only time I use the DAW. And I just need to have everything on its own track sent to the DAW. So I don't need a big audio interface. You know, I would just rather have a mixer that has everything, and then when I'm ready, I could plug it in the computer and I could track everything. Super simple. So what I decided to go with was the Mackie Onyx 24. Now this one is similar. It's probably the biggest competitor, I guess, to the Tascam Model series. I considered the Tascam Model 24, but the fact of the matter is it has more bells and whistles than I actually need. I don't need onboard recording. Straight up. I don't need it. It's nice to have, but I just don't need it because I track everything to a DAW, and primarily I'm using this as a live mixer. And that's basically what the Onyx series by Mackie is. Similar to the Model series by Tascam, they have a 12, they have a 16, and they have a 24. I think they actually have an 8 too, if I'm not mistaken. And all it is, it's 24 tracks, 24 inputs. Caveat, make that 22. Remember, 2 of those are a stereo out. It has 24 tracks. I've got it's got an EQ. It's got onboard effects if you want that. And now those are only really applicable to your live mix. They don't go down the chain when you're sending them to the DAW. It's just for the live mix. Now on the Tascam, you can use the compressor and the EQ pre-sending it to the DAW. But I don't believe you can do that on the Mackie. It's just for the live mix. And then if you're sending things to DAW, it's just the raw tracks. They just go straight in. But this is exactly what I needed. I wanted the 24 inputs. I wanted as many inputs as I could get. That's way more than I need right now. I think I counted all my synths, and what I have right now, if I had everything running in one song, which I never do, I think I have like 14 inputs or something that I need. So that's an extra 10 tracks that I'm not even going to use right now. So it gives me room to grow. It still allows me to have all my synths in those situations where it's like, well, I want to use every synth in this song. I can do that. It's a great live mixer. It just feels really nice. Mackie makes these products that are super heavy duty. They feel like they're bulletproof. And then when I'm ready to switch over to the DAW, I can just plug it into the interface mode, and I can keep my live mix for when I'm performing, and at the same time record all those synths on their individual tracks. And it's perfect for me. So those are my 3 mixers. Don't make the same mistake that I made. Don't end up buying 3 in 3 years. Try to find one that's going to work for you right off the bat. And again, the number one thing to consider is track count. Think about how much you're going to need and double it, and then you're going to be safe. You're never going to be mad about having too many tracks, but once you hit that wall of not having enough, you got to get another mixer, and that kind of sucks. That's my advice. I hope it's helpful to you. I've actually got to plug that new mixer in and tear down my synth station and rebuild it, so I might be out for a little bit. It's going to take probably at least a week to redo my my whole synth setup. But I'll be back with more synth content when we get back. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing, leave a like. They got a new thing called Hype that'll help push this out to other people. So hype it if you think it's helpful and it's informative to other people. I hope you guys are having an awesome day, and I will see you next time. Ryan out.